to School Night presentation. This evening, we will be introducing ourselves. We will let you know what it looks like to be learning in our world languages classrooms in the middle school. We'll also show you what your child will be working on, and at the end, there will be the question and answer session. Right now, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Dana Miller-Kitch, and I'm the French teacher here in the middle school.
I'm Queenie Xu. I'm the Mandarin teacher here.
Hi, I am Javier Castro, and I am the Spanish teacher.
My name is Maureen Cullen, and I am also a Spanish teacher. And not pictured with us, but pictured on the slide is Dipali Chathras, who is our teaching assistant.
So in the world language department, the big ideas around our department is first and foremost is that everyone learns a language at their own pace, and we all realize this, and we all work towards getting the students to progress at the pace that suits them. We also know that comprehension comes first, and so production will come when the student is ready. In our classrooms, we try to use the target language as much as possible, and so they can hear Spanish, Mandarin, or French as much as possible. Also, we realize that sometimes students may have already learned certain structures or certain vocabulary, but they will be learning it in a new context. And when you can learn language in different contexts, it really deepens your proficiency. And so even though a child may already have learned it in a different way, they will be deepening their understanding and their ability to produce, seeing it in new ways.
Here are our middle school world language standards. So interpersonal communication, they can engage in conversation. Interpretive communication, there's a listening part and a writing part. So they can interpret audio and visual resources. The student will develop their listening and reading skills. Presentational communication, so the students create spoken and written messengers.
The name of our courses in our department are Building, Emerging, and Expanding. Building will be courses for beginners, while Expanding it is for more advanced students or students who has been exposed to Spanish more time. That you are in Building doesn't mean that you are in year 6, Emerging year 7, Expanding year 8. The classes are mixed depending on how many years of Spanish you took. And within each level, also we know that we are going to have mixed abilities. For instance, in Building, we have students who never took Spanish before and students who took some years in elementary. So for us, we know it's very important differentiation to try to reach the needs of all the students.
So what does a typical language class look like on a daily basis? Currently, in our current setting, we're doing 30-minute classes. So, and of course, over time, based on what the middle school decides, what our guidelines will be, that time will hopefully and most likely will increase. So, what do? Well, we've got many online interactive activities, a lot of people using, Quizlet and quizzes and Padlet and Flipgrid and many ways in which the kids can communicate with each other. They can share their work, get feedback on their work, collaborate with the other kids in the class. We use breakout sessions, lots of breakout sessions in Zoom classes, a variety of reading and writing activities. We watch videos in the target language, and we really make an attempt at finding authentic cultural experiences. And through it all, after all of these activities, we also like to do some reflection on our learning and some reflection on our process, like how are we learning?
And so we put together a little bit of video to show you what the students have been busy doing in these first 2 weeks of school.
Have been working on creating a Google site all about ourselves in the first couple weeks of school. The reason is that in language classes, we want to create a strong classroom community, and we want to really value relationships so that students feel comfortable with one another and so that they feel safe to take risks. And so we felt that by doing this kind of activity, while also learning about how to use Google Sites, is a good way to do it. So right now it's been mostly in English, but we will be using the site throughout the year, adding and changing to it as we learn the vocabulary and the structures in the language. So this is the site that I did and created and did a tutorial for the students. So this is, some of the things we learned about Google Sites and how to set it up, inserting photos and maps, captions and titles. Here's an example of one student site, and this one is, they added different pages, and this one is about their vacations. And so here are some photos, and they added an image carousel and a slide. So the students have been busy adding different things as they want, and it's been a fun way for us to get to know each other, and we'll be using these in the next classes as we start building in the language.
At the time of creating their sites, our students had the options to do them in English, in the target language, that it could be French, Mandarin, or Spanish, or a combination of both. Here we have a couple of examples. This student wrote it in English. You can see that she inserted titles, subtitles, different pictures, maps, also YouTube videos. Sites is a very powerful tool. There are students that they wrote their website both in Spanish and in English. And there are students that they wrote everything in the target language. After they create the site, our goal was that they interact. They can see what other students created. So for that, we created Padlets, and in this application, students can upload their websites, and the expectation is that after they have posted their website, they go to other student sites and they post comments. So we make sure that a student visits other student sites to know things about their life and things that they like to do. As you can see here, the comments also, it could be in English or it could be in the target language, in this case, in Spanish.
Here are the sites from Mandarin students. This student introduced herself using a lot of pictures. And she also used the dividers. She introduced herself in English and some Chinese. This student introduced herself and inserted maps where she has lived before. This student added 2 different pages. She also insert a video. So the student used her picture she drew and as background. So nice. So definitely we can tell her hobbies. Some students, they want to challenge themselves, so they use Mandarin they have learned before to introduce themselves. And then they also apply the different functions, insert map, pictures, and videos.
How parents can support your child at home. So help your child to build a daily routine that includes them checking their teacher's sites, submitting their work on Google Classroom on time, checking Google Calendar for the Zoom classes and links, and reaching out to the teachers or attending office hour if they have questions or need some help.
If you have any further questions after this evening, you can always email your child's teacher. Our email addresses are here on the screen, so you can take note of those. And please feel free to contact us with any questions that you may have. And so now we'll move on to the question and answer part of the presentation.
Thank you for that, Modern World Language team. We have a question, Dana, that I thought maybe you might want to start by answering. It's around a pretty important topic. I think maybe it's answered, but it might be helpful just to capture that, I think, for everyone, which is around how we do manage conversation and speaking and interacting when we're actually not face-to-face.
Right. So good evening, everyone. So one of the things that we have been doing is most of our classes already have been synchronous. And so one of our goals is to try to do as much as we can synchronous with the students, which will give them the opportunities to be able to practice using their French or Spanish or Mandarin. I know that for us, in my classes right now, we have done a little bit, but not yet. We're going to be launching into that in the next week, where we're going to be doing more and more in French. So what I would say is that we are very much aware of this, obviously. And so we are designing activities to help the students to be able to interact during our synchronous classes. Also, we are looking at other possibilities, perhaps arranging for students to try and maybe Zoom on their own, or do some activities with Flipgrid or some other opportunities to try and address the interpersonal communication component of the language classes.
Hey, thanks, Dana. I appreciate that. We have a question around expanding classes taught in their language. I think maybe if I can summarize that, I think what maybe the question is asking is, are the classes mainly taught in the target language? And I would say across the board, even in the early stages, that the languages should be taught in the target language. But I'm going to look at somebody more experienced than I in languages to give maybe some more examples of what that might look like.
I'll answer that one. So as the students get more experienced with the language, more and more of the language is used. We still try to, our goal is to make the language comprehensible, no matter what the student's level is at. So whether they are in building or whether they are in expanding, we adjust the language to match where they are at. That said, some classes, depending on what's happening that day, some may have more English than other classes, but generally, especially once the beginning of the school year is behind us and we've got a good routine and all of our, our learning is set up, then we definitely shift more into the target language. So for all of us, our goal is to try to use as much of it as possible, making it comprehensible to the students that are in the classes.
Thanks, Dana.
May I
Castro.
A little bit on that? Yeah, that as Ms. Madame Dana mentioned at the beginning, we try to use the target language as much as possible. So it's going to happen in all the levels, but it's going to be different at each time. At the beginning of the year, we are trying to set routines. So we cannot go into the target language right away, because then we are going to miss students that they will not know what activity we are doing and so on. One of the things that I told the students is, I am talking in Spanish many times, and my goal is not for you to understand what I am saying. My goal is that you start listening, and eventually you will be able to understand. So sometimes we speak a lot in the target language, and sometimes I think that the goal is not that they understand all the time, but that they get used to that. That's why we use English to support that we speak in our target language, and after that we use the English to support that for the students who they are not at that level of understanding yet, and eventually they will get there.
Thanks, Castro. Winnie, did you have anything to add to that, or do we think we've captured it?
Yeah, I think, okay, as they say, that we try to speak as much targeted language as possible in our classroom. Like, for example, my building students, we have learned ni hao, hello, 再见, goodbye, thank you, 谢谢. So now, even now, you know, since we have learned, so we try to use all these phrases in our class. So depends on students' level, but we definitely try to use as much targeted language as possible in our classes. Thank you.
And I think that
Thanks,
the
Winnie.
activity, oh, sorry, the activity that what Dana was talking about, you know, this idea of, you know, building a classroom environment. And I think the more we know about each other, the more we create a community, the more students feel comfortable being in the room and comfortable taking risks with the language. And I think that, you know, that this department is very good at kind of building that community in their classroom, so that students do feel very comfortable speaking the language and making mistakes.
Thank you. So I think the answer is we try some target language in every level. We have a question around getting confidence in speaking more in the language, getting kids to build confidence in speaking more. Any ideas or any experiences there?
Oh, I think it just builds on what Maureen just said, is that in order for students to be able to feel confident, to take risks, and to be okay with making mistakes, they have to feel safe, and they have to feel like they are valued and they're known. And so that is why for us in the World Languages Department, we have spent so much time, and we will continue to spend more time on building our classroom community, because we want students to be risk takers. We want students to feel like it's okay to make mistakes, and that we will support them. And so it is really important to build this atmosphere of risk-taking and confidence, and knowing that they will be supported in order for students, no matter what their level, to go ahead and try speaking and interacting in the language.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I just want to talk about, you know, at Zoom class, what we have been recently doing. So for expanding and emerging Mandarin students, we are reviewing. So I told them, you know, I really understand after the summer, you might forget a lot, but it's okay. You know, they can use, actually, Zoom, you have a lot of functions. So if they don't understand, just type in chat privately to me, so I can respond. So then they feel comfortable, right, to ask a question, because we really want them to understand, you know. So this is very important. And the other something else that we've been doing is like a breakout rooms. So we do we let a small group, you know, discuss in the breakout room. So after discussion and after practice, they come to the main room, then they share. I think in this kind of setting, I think I really like Zoom breakout rooms, because they really get more time to interact with others and practice than, you know, present. And one more. Okay, so, and also, like, I think us, and we, you know, we had like World Language Department, we had a lot of meetings, and we all talk about model is so important. So we try to model the students, you know, how to do, what to do, so make them feel very comfortable and to do on their own. Thank you.
Thanks, Winnie. So I think one of the things that's really important, I think everyone's heard there, is the importance of people feeling safe. And the thing we've learned about Zoom actually is that children feel in some ways safer advocating for what they need, and they can do it a little bit privately. So while it might not be our preferred means of teaching and learning, there's definitely been some upsides, and this is a nice, safe way for kids to start the year. So it's not all bad, I guess, is the message. So we've got a question around children who are outside of the India time zone, and we do have some families in that situation, and that certainly makes things a little tougher, and that can't attend synchronous classes. Options for the sessions, live sessions, where they can practice target language, not just listen. I think you've got some office hours that might address that. Dana, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So we're still sort of trying to find out the best way to do this. I do know that Ms. Shu has already set up office hours for students outside. I have been waiting to see and seeing how many of my students are in the Americas time zones, because and other time zones, because I want, what I'm thinking of doing is trying to create a group for themselves where we can interact in French. So they might not be with their classmates per se, like in their classes on PowerSchool, but with other French students, so we can do activities where they still get the interaction and where they still are able to practice some of more authentic speaking situations and conversation situations. So just trying to figure out some of those this week. That's one of the things that I personally am working on.
Thanks, Dana. We have a question which is a fairly common question, and by common I mean often parents have this language learning is a fairly unique, kids come in at all various levels. And so I think the question really is about when you get students in your class and you have a range of learners, I guess like you would in many classes, how do you manage that so that children can continue to go from where they are and keep them moving forward?
I'll take that as department lead, and then Castro and Huini, if you want to jump in afterwards, go ahead. So building is often the level where sometimes there's some confusion or wonderings, because that's where we have students who have never had the language before, and then we've had students where maybe they've had 1 or 2 or even 3 years in elementary school to develop some language skills. And so what it is we look often at the number of years, but also the hours that they have had with the language. And also what we look at is that we understand this. And so our classes are designed around that. So we put a lot of emphasis in all the levels on reflection. Where am I at in my language journey? And then in goal setting, where do I want to be at? So we do a lot of reflecting on what we've learned, where we want to go, and we really try to empower the students to be a little bit more in charge of their learning so they can sort of push themselves in the areas that they identify where they would really like to progress. So yes, we as teachers design a lot of our activities, all of our activities, to meet these different needs, but also we really want to ask the students to be partners in this and allow them to realize that they really do have a lot of control over how much progress they make when they set these goals for themselves.
Thanks, Dana. And parents, thank you for your questions tonight. They were really excellent questions because I think they're the things that have been on most people's minds. So whoever put themselves out there and asked them, we appreciate that. We are going to wrap this session up because we have another one to go to in about 15 minutes time, and many of you will be at that. I'm looking at Serena and I think it's social studies. I just checked this. Yes, social studies. Yay, I got all of them right tonight. Okay, so we have social studies next. I want to thank the World Language team for joining us tonight, and they can go and get ready for tomorrow, and we'll see the parents in our next session.